Welcome to the next episode of the CAPB Podcast. I am delighted to have on Heidi Burton, a RAF
Hello.
veteran who served for 16 years as a photographer and is now the founder of Handbags Home. Welcome, Heidi.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time away from making amazing stuff and coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Yes, it's all a bit chaotic in my workshop at the moment. I've got quite a few orders sort of like in the pipeline that I want to try and get finished up over the next few days. So yeah.
Organized chaos is perfect.
Yes, it's a little bit like I tell people sometimes that my I look a little bit like a tailor's on a unit, and that I've got various uniforms in various stages all over the place. So it's all a bit crazy. I've got a rail over there with loads of old jackets and stuff on. So
half expecting like a tape measure and some chalk. Just right,
yeah.
That's like your weapon of choice.
I have got a tape measure sat on the desk at the back there, and my laptop is actually propped up on my sewing machine. So
Perfect. Multitasking at all levels. I love it.
Yeah.
Heidi, you served for 16 years in the RAF. If your career was a highlight reel, what does it look like?
I mean, being a military photographer was fantastic. The reason why I joined the military as a photographer was because I'm lazy and I couldn't be bothered going to uni to learn how to be a photographer and do all of that stuff. Whereas I joined the military and, you can, after your 9 weeks of marching up and down, you go off and do your trade training. And at the time it was 7 months photography training. So 7 months and that's it, you're a photographer. You've got all the kit that you want. You've got all the customers that you want. You've got a roof over your head. You're being fed. It's like happy days. It's like easy way of being a photographer. And I did really well during my career and I got to go to some cracking places. I mean, I was based up at RAF Kinloss up in Scotland for a few years. That was fantastic up there. Absolutely loved it. And then one of my postings, I was actually based at Innsworth, where I was working for one of the command headquarters. And whilst I was there, I got to travel all over the place. I mean, there's not many people in the military that can boast of having a deployment to Barbados, but I was lucky enough to have one because there were 2 RAF regiment guys that were rowing the Atlantic. So we photographed them in the Canary Islands leaving and then had to go to Barbados to capture them arriving at the other end.
That's a tough gig.
I know, it was awful. It was awful. But the good stuff did balance out against the sort of the not so good stuff. I did a little bit of time in Iraq, Kuwait at the end of 99. Afghanistan, I was in Afghanistan on Herrick 5, working in PSYOPs. So that was interesting, but yeah, a little bit of a tricky place, especially when you go out on some of the patrols and see things out there. But the sort of the good and the bad all kind of balanced off against each other. And then towards the end of my career, my last 4 years were spent back at the School of Photography where I'd learned, and I was teaching video to other military photographers. So I kind of went full circle and achieved so many things within the 16 years. It was good. I really did enjoy my time.
I think it's one of those trades that you forget about, but arguably are so important because, like, the document, like I say, between Paul and I, serving over 30 years, deploying all over, it's the photos that are important. And it's not just the photos that we've taken, it's the photos, the professional photos, the ones on the front of the military magazines and soldier magazines, because we were in the army and stuff, where you really relate to it. And that capturing that like history and that military, because it's stopped now. We're not in Iraq anymore. We're not in Afghanistan anymore.
No, it's all kind of gone quiet, and it's like, as you say, it's the documents there, and also like the guys that when I was training video, I was training them in news gathering. So these were the guys that were then going out to theatre and producing footage to send back to the local, to the UK media. So whenever you saw footage that said MOD footage at the top of it on BBC News or whatever, that was military photographers that were out there filming to produce this stuff to send back home. So, as you say, documenting it and telling people exactly what's going on out there, as well as the photos and that being a recruitment tool for the military, showing people what we actually do.
I think in your time as well, because you would have joined, when did you join? Around 98, 97?
Yeah, 97.
That's like, it's almost like there's a digital revolution, if you want. Do you know what I mean? It's all with digital photography and even if you look at like deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, people using GoPros and So you had this mix of the professional photography, taken
Yeah.
incredible, really good bits of kit, getting all the landscapes in and the detail of the vehicles and the incidents and stuff, versus some of the raw footage. And the blend of that is like a real, there's so much good documentary stuff out there from our recent deployments and stuff where they blend the two,
Yeah, when I was in Afghanistan, because I wasn't doing public relations photography there, and I was doing the psychological operations stuff, so it was a bit different what I was doing. But I think that was the start of when the guys were going out with helmet cams and capturing a lot of the stuff out on the battlefield. And some of them would come back, and they'd come back to me, and they'd get me to do the editing and stuff like that. And it was quite interesting seeing some of this. Did you say it's like proper raw as in the sense that it's unedited, but also raw as in the nature of the footage, just showing the sort of the truth of the battlefield? Because obviously some of the military, the professional photographers, their footage would have to be kind of like, cleaned up, if you like, in terms of what the MOD would allow to send out. Whereas some of this helmet cam stuff was just telling everything, showing everything and not holding anything back. So it was quite interesting. But seeing that whole progression, as you say, from the sort of, because when I first joined up, I learned on film. We were still using wet film in the military, so I got to see the whole how to process film and how to do your own printing, and you get covered in the chemicals and you end up stinking of the chemicals and all that kind of stuff. And then I got to see the sort of the birth of digital photography within the military a couple of years later, and so it was interesting being there at that cusp. And then seeing where it is now with digital photography, and it's just
it's crazy. I mean, I use iPhone, right? And like my iPhone has got over 25,000 photos on it. I'm that, and it's like, and most of them are utter rubbish. Do you know what I mean? But some of them, the quality you can get out of like a camera now versus back in the day, you'd have to have like some kind of SLR or some kind of like, you wanted a decent photo taken, you would have to reach out and say, hey, I'm running this exercise, this activity, please can we have. It's an absolute talent. But that's not what you do now.
No, life's a little bit different. Although I still do photography, I still have kind of, because the whole plan when I left the RAF was to just be a photographer. That was all it was going to be. So I still do photography, sort of corporate and corporate stuff, public relations. Generally try and avoid the weddings and baby photos because they're far too much like hard work. I'm ex-RAF. I'm used to an easy life, Monday to Friday. That's all. That's how it goes.
Although I know a lot about the hotels, so for weddings and that, if you need a bit, I can,
Yeah. But yeah, so alongside the photography now, I sew. So Handbags Home, and I basically rip apart people's old uniforms and turn them into something a little bit different. That's not necessarily quite so wearable, but. So cushions and clutch bags and handbags and things like that.
Your work is absolutely fantastic. I've seen it on social media. I've seen people going to mess functions and high-profile events carrying your bags. And I think even that is, I think it's such a great addition to like the military dress, because even like, the mess dresses and stuff, the handbags and stuff, they're almost issued. It's like you will have an issue handbag and it will look like this. So the creativeness of the clutch bags and with that bit of uniform, that detail specific to the cause, I think is fantastic, Heidi.
Yeah, I was, when I left the RAF, I was a sergeant, and I can remember, I go to mess functions in my mess dress, and everyone, the handbag that you carry was just like a boring black little clutch bag or whatever. It wasn't particularly nice. And I can remember thinking at the time, so this was before I started sewing. This was when I was still serving. And I can remember thinking at the time, it'd be really nice to have a bag that will match my uniform. And I did actually speak to the station tailors at the time, and I got a scrap of fabric that I was going to try and do something with, and then never did. So when I started making these clutch bags, I'm kind of almost like a little bit jealous. The me back in the past would have loved to be able to take one of these bags to mess functions. But I love that I can do that for women that are serving now. And, for all the services. And I've recently made one for a Royal Navy captain, I think it was. and she was saying that she's going to be on a top table, and it's all going to be women, and 4 out of the 6 women on this top table have got one of my bags, so she had to have one as well. So this, hopefully, I'm going to get a cracking photo of a line of them, all with these bags sat there on this top table, which is just fantastic.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Where did the idea come from? Was it just a question of, I'm quite crafty, I've got some of this material left over from my military service, I'm going to mess about with it? Or was it, I have an idea, I want to make a thing?
Well, the whole military bags, because when I first started with the sewing, I kind of started really using Harris tweed. The uniform thing wasn't really a feature. And then I've got an ex-Navy photographer friend of mine who, she's got a bag and shoe obsession, like massive bag and shoe obsession. She's got a whole room in her house that's devoted to all her bags and shoes, designer bags and shoes. And I said to her one day, I said, right, send me some of your old uniform, because she left at the same sort of time as I did. I said, send me some of your old uniform and some badges and buttons and things, and I'll see if I can come up with something for you. And I'd already made one sort of very simple bag out of RAF uniform for a customer, but nothing quite like this one. And I've made like this big handbag, and the bag, the style that I do it is it's got sides to it, so you've got like an ideal place to put the rank badges on the side, put buttons on it, and I gave her this bag, and she was over the moon. And I did a Facebook post that ended up with a reach last time I checked of about 40,000 on it. And it was like, oh, okay. Right. So this is kind of gone a bit popular then. And people just started coming to me. And then one day somebody asked about making a clutch bag, because I'd made a similar sort of style clutch bag, but in Harris tweed before.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked about making one in the uniform, and it worked really well. And it's just kind of gone from there, really. It's it's mad.
I love, what I love is how individual they are, and how women in the forces, the numbers have increased to a point now where we've women frontline. No, there's no job off the cards, and the fact that to have that when you're in your mess dress, or even as something when you leave, because everyone who leaves has got a uniform. Like you said, when you left, you've got this uniform, you've got these bits, and you're never going to wear it again. You're not going to sell it, so it just stays in the loft. So to have something where you can put it into something with a bit of meaning behind it, even if it's something to tell the kids and the grandkids, even if it's something that just sits on a sofa in your spare room, where you think, that's okay. Yeah, I think that's so cool.
Yes. Yeah, and another thing, I think with the bags for the mess dress as well, it's all right for the gents. The gents have got pockets in their trousers. The women have got nowhere to put anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So to carry a nice bag is, it's great. And the cushions. I mean, I made some from. So my old mess dress, I've made a cushion for me. I haven't yet done my number ones. They're still sat on a mannequin in the corner of my studio, because I can't. I want to
bring yourself to it just yet.
She'd have nothing to wear, this dummy that I've got there. She'd have nothing to wear if I took it. So I made one out of my mess dress, and then I've made one out of my husband's, because he was reserves REME. So I made one out of his mess dress first, gave it to him as a surprise, and then last year I got his jacket for his twos. Because, I said to him, well, look, you just got to accept the fact that you're never going to fit into it ever again. So I might as well cut it up and turn it into a cushion. So we've got the three of them sort of sat in the corner of the living room, looking good, really.
So once the bags they're obviously very successful. Lots of people having them. Do you find, which is your best seller at the moment? Is it your bags? Is it your cushions?
I think the clutch bags are really, really popular at the moment, but the cushions are great as well. Obviously, the cushions are more popular for the gents than the clutch bags are. So I've got quite a few orders of those on the go. So there's one lady at the moment. I'm actually making 3 cushions for her, because she wants me to make one from the sort of like the bib waistcoat. It's RLC, I think. And
okay.
No, it's not RLC. One of the other, I can't remember which regiment, I've had to learn so much about all sorts of different regiments in the army. It's just crazy. But she's got obviously the jacket, and she's got like the bib waistcoat. So she wants me to make a separate cushion out of the bib waistcoat as well as the jacket, and then also number twos. So I mean, the cushions are really, really popular because you say they're great because you can just stick them on a sofa in the corner of your room, or on if you've got a nice armchair that doesn't really get used much. It can
A nice Chesterfield.
Yes, lovely leather Chesterfield in the corner. So they're really popular for that. Also, they're quite popular. I've done quite a few as sort of mementos when people have passed away.
Oh yeah.
Which it's kind of an honour when I make them. I feel it's like the pressure's on me, but it's such an honour that I've kind of been trusted to turn this uniform into something that they can have out.
That must be crazy. That must be crazy for you as well, seeing as you served, you've deployed, you've been to Afghanistan, and there's a real connection there. You're not just a seamstress who can throw together a bag and okay, cool, it's in memory. It's like you get it. Yeah.
There's one that I've got in at the moment. Is been sent to me by the mum of a guy that died. I think he was 2 herricks after me. And so that kind of, it brings it home, the fact that I know and I've been in that environment and I know what the environment's like. And also myself having, knowing people that I've lost in theatre as well. So, it's an honour that I can do it for them.
What a cool memento as well, because like you said, it's like the memorial pictures and the medals and stuff about it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's difficult for a lot of people, but having something that could potentially be used every day, looked at every day, do you know what I mean? That must be it must be comforting,
Yes, it is. And I mean, some lovely things happen as well sometimes. I recently made this was last year, I made a clutch bag for the mum of a medic that had died in Afghanistan. And I made the bag and then I posted, her mum was happy for me to put a picture on of her Channing Day.
Yeah, I took Channing Day through training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Channing Day was, she was in her first deployment to Iraq. She was in my unit. I was a troop sergeant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she passed away in Afghanistan, yeah.
Yeah. And I made this clutch bag for a mum and I posted about it on my Facebook page. And someone from the medics, I kept their name out of, I'm not
pushing
their name. But she said, look, I'd like to pay for that if I can, please. So she sent me the money for the clutch bag and then I was able to refund Channing's mum. And things like that, it's just like, amazing that people do that.
It's brilliant. It is brilliant. And as I say, it's a real talent, Heidi, because your stuff it looks exceptional. It looks exceptional. And it's a real bit of quality that people can take away. What was I going to say? It's also amazing. We've had, as I say, we've recorded an episode before with someone else from the RAF, Jack Wild from Rugby Buckets, and he makes stuff, bucket hats, out of rugby jerseys, to keep, it's like if someone has a rugby jersey, it's really important to them, doesn't fit them anymore, make a hat or something. Again, it's like that bit of memento. Yours is a similar model in the sense that you don't need reams and reams of people's uniforms. People send their stuff to you, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. So, people will be, sometimes it's people that are having to clear out of the loft and then they've remembered that they've got, all this uniform there. It's like, well, what's the point in having it sat in the loft, gathering dust, taking up space, possibly a future home for any mice that might appear in the loft. You might as well kind of get it out and turn it into something that you can have on display in the corner of your living room. And it's I love it. It's brilliant. I love that I can do it for people and do it for other veterans that no longer use their uniform, or for the serving people that want a clutch bag to take to mess functions.
I think it's honestly, I think it's brilliant. Where did the where did you? Because you also, again, looking on the Etsy page, you also make footstools. Did you have to learn bigger stuff and learn new techniques and think, or was there a demand first, or did you think to grow the business, I'll start making more stuff?
Well, I mean, in terms of like upholstery stuff, when I actually left the RAF and doing all my resettlement courses, it's like everyone was looking for courses to be able to carry on their businesses, to set up a business or whatever. I thought, well, I don't need to do a photography course because, I've done it for 16 years. I'm quite happy. Yeah, it's all right. I can do that. I can press a button. It's fine. So I thought I would do some fun courses and things that would interest me, not necessarily from a business perspective. So I did one on patchwork quilting, and then I also did a week-long course on upholstery, not intending to use it for anything work-wise. It was literally just so that if I fancied upholstering a chair at home, I could do it.
Yeah.
And it was a great course, and it was only as sort of like, as with most of my the items that I do, is people have an idea and they go, "Oh, can you do something like this to go with that?" And then it just kind of developed. And somebody just asked me one day if I could make a footstool, and so I make one, and then when I post about it on my social media, people go, "Oh, I need one of those as well." And it just kind of becomes another one of my items at that point. So,
do you have to stock things like the buttons and stuff, or can you only use what people send you, or is it just a bit of a lottery?
No. A lot of the time, I'll try and use what they send me, because obviously it adds to the cost if I have to start buying stuff in.
Yeah.
But I have a collection, and when it first started out, I had a small plastic box that was for all my extra buttons and everything. And now, I mean, obviously it won't work on an audio podcast, but I've basically got, let me turn the camera. that thing there is basically full of buttons. And all of this under here is rank badges.
Love it.
So I've got them all organised. I've got army trades, RAF trades, Navy trades. And as I say, I've had to learn so much about all three services. Obviously RAF I was, pretty kind of au fait with, but Navy, their trade badges, they've got so many trade badges. It's just, and keeping up with them because they change as well.
I was just about to say that, because like the medical corps, you mentioned about Shannon there, but you mentioned like the Royal Army Medical Corps, which is what I served in, it doesn't exist anymore. It's now the Royal Army Medical Service, and they've amalgamated. So there's going to be some service dress where people are going to want that. What a cool way to commemorate that part of your service. Yeah.
It's good, but as you say, it's like dealing with all the different badges and things. I mean, especially now with the new crown for King Charles.
Yeah, of course, as well. Yeah,
that's the whole thing. So now I have to ask people, if I'm having to buy in cap badges or whatever, I'm having to say to people, look, do you want the Queen Elizabeth crown or do you want the King Charles crown? Because some people might be serving now and they commissioned, like if it's an officer's one, they commissioned under Queen Elizabeth, so they'd rather have the Queen Elizabeth one. And I think as well, I've been waiting for various badges to come out with the new crown on. I don't think a lot of the metal or the Stay Bright badges have yet been fully updated, because some of them are a struggle to get hold of. And it's the nightmare.
But it's important detail, isn't it? Because the devil is in the detail. These kind of things, if you put the wrong one on, it might take it away.
Yeah. And with the medics in particular, that the colour of the mess dress, the cherry red and the dark navy, it's got to be just the right colour of cherry red.
Yeah.
There's a company. Excuse me. There's a company up in. No, it's actually a reminder for 12 o'clock for us. But it's 15:15, so you can ignore that. In terms of like all the different colours of the fabrics and everything, there's a company up north called Hainsworth who make a lot of the fabrics, and I've actually got one of their swatches, which has got all of the different colours of the fabrics in for all of the different regimental, all the mess dress and all things like that, which is, that's something I never thought I'd be having to do. I'd have to learn
it is important, because all of the colours and all of the cap badges and all the services, they mean something. So if you didn't have that like attention to detail or didn't think about it, you could people would be like, oh, it's not the same. Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah. I recently made a bag that I can't really talk about yet, because she wants me to kind of keep it under wraps until later on in the year. But there was a lot of sort of to and fro and that one to make sure I got it exactly right, because where she's going to be carrying this bag, there's going to be lots of people from that particular regiment at the event, and she knows, because she's the mum of somebody serving, and she knows that, you know, they'll all be looking at going, oh, that's not quite right, that's not quite right. So it's pressure's on to make sure I get it all right and to get the right cap badges, and then if I don't get, I mean, there was a Royal Artillery mess dress bag that I made, and I had the wrong colour backing for one of the badges, so I had to kind of take it off and get the right one on there, because they were like, that's not quite right. It's like,
With regards to the business itself, what's the biggest lesson you've learned? Because, I mean, how long have you been doing this?
The the bags, I suppose, sort of since 2015, the sewing, but the uniform bags sort of 2016, 2017 kind of thing. But I think the biggest lesson I learned was to move out of the spare room at home as soon as possible, because when I was working at home, I mean, I'm lucky that I've got this space that I can work in. It's away from home, so I can separate home from the work. But when I was initially doing it at home, I was in one of the spare rooms. I had, you know, boxes and boxes piled up, and it was so oppressive.
Yeah.
And then when you're at home, it's so easy to get distracted by housework and things that you need to be doing at home. And getting out of the back of the spare room and into a workshop where I can kind of just spread everything out and I can concentrate on work made a massive difference. So yeah, I mean, I didn't take this room on until 2018, so I had a couple of years working from home, and it was definitely.
I think it's that growth. I think that's something we see a bit on the podcast, where people are, you know, certainly some of the smaller businesses, they start on the kitchen table. You know, they start in their bedroom. Jack Wiles making rugby bucket hats in his bedroom. Tom Newey, who runs Challenge Coins and owns Challenge Coins, started on the kitchen counter. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and now they've both got units. Tom's had to move a unit, and that level of growth and having a requirement for a workshop shows that the business is doing all right. There is a demand, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And it's lovely to have a space that I can just. I mean, it's a tip, you know. But I think
Organised
that's kind
chaos.
of. Yes. I know where everything is, and I know, you know, what needs to be done and what's next to be done. So, but yeah, it's. I mean, I have expanded to fill the space, definitely.
But it's important. But Heidi, it's important, you know, because it's something that people maybe don't consider. Because if you did everything from your house, what time do you finish work?
Yeah.
When does, like, you know, the creativity stop and the bit of downtime and family and stuff start? You know, it's too easy to go, I'll just go and check my email. Even myself, I don't work in a crafty space or a technical space where I'm making stuff, but I have an office which is in the garden, and even the walk from my house to the garden is enough of a detachment for when I'm in the house. I'm not worried about checking my emails. I'm not worried about, I'll just go and do that bit of work. Whereas before we moved here, it was my office was in the house, and the office was fine. But I would see myself just being in there. I'll just work a bit later. It's just here. I'll just go and do something on the Saturday. I'll do something on the Sunday. And having that, you know, having as you say, a premises or a separate area, really important.
Yeah, and it was so easy as well when I was working from home. You know, it's like I'm sat there on the sofa or whatever, just relaxing of an evening. It'd be like, I'll just nip upstairs for an hour. I'll just get this order finished, and it's nice to kind of have that real separation and have a commute to work.
Yeah.
You know, did you say it kind of separates out? And where I am, I'm in pretty much in the centre of Weston-super-Mare as well. Which is great, because if the weather is really good and I want to get a break, I can just head to the seafront. It's fantastic.
Yeah. What's next? What's next for Handbags and Home?
I don't know. I'm very much a kind of a let things happen and see what they are. I'm rubbish at forward planning, but I've recently taken part in a program that was run by Barclays. Specifically for veteran businesses. It's part of the Barclays Eagle Labs thing. And that's been really great to kind of help focus the mind and sort of make me think about what could be the future. Because, you know, with the best will in the world, I've only got one pair of hands. And I think to be able to scale up the business and to kind of get it any bigger, I would need to start looking at, getting other people involved. But then that does sort of like bring up the question. It's like, well, at the moment, it's quite a personal service that I offer. So, yeah, so it's just kind of thinking about where it can go from here in terms of, can I get other people involved? How would I get other people involved? And how would it work, really? So,
Do you ever do things like any shows or anything and have like a normal store, or is everything made to order?
Pretty much everything is made to order. I used to, when I first started doing it and I was doing the Harris Tweed items, I would go to craft fairs and, village markets and things like that. And it was great, but it was also, towards the end, it kind of got a little bit soul destroying because with the best will in the world, they're handmade. I can't compete with the mass produced. And
of course.
I turn up to markets and there'd be somebody there with a load of cheap bags that they, wholesaled from China or whatever, and then people would kind of like look at my bags and see the price of my bags comparison to these $12.99 fake leather bags, and they'd be like, yeah. So I kind of stopped, and I think COVID was quite handy for that because that sort of forced me to stop anyway.
Yeah.
And I didn't really miss it. And I never really took the uniform items along because I thought, well, they're such a personal thing. It's a bit different.
To get the right, you can't take every cap badge and every design to everything. Yeah.
No, and that's the thing, especially with the army. It's not so bad with the RAF and the Navy because I could make something that's the RAF with the RAF buttons. Navy, it's fine. But yeah, with the army stuff, it's like, well, what regiment do I cover? Yeah,
what buttons do you put on? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I have actually I'm booked in for a sort of like it's like a sustainable craft fair, if you like, and it's at a company near me. They're actually called Ad Astra Cider, and they're a cider company that's run by an ex-RAF guy.
Wow!
And they're having a craft fair thing in conjunction with a local sort of green eco charity group, and so I'm going along there for the first time with my uniform cushions. Because I thought, right, well, I've got a few uniforms in. I'll just make what I can out of those and see if they're any good, if there's any kind of takers for them. But yeah, so that's sort of the first craft fair I've done for a long time. So I'm a little bit like, stressed because I've got to make loads of cushions.
Your work's so good. And I'm just thinking, like, we attended, just as attendees, a thing called the National Transition Event. And it happened at Silverstone, and it was huge. It was happened at Silverstone racetrack. There was a track day included, and there was loads of like military. It's called the National Transition Event, but it was a lot of people talking about their military programs that they offer, and also about what they do if they're a veteran-owned business or whatever. And I can just see, because it's a lot of people leaving, having a stand there showing what can be done with their uniform could, like, But again, it's a really difficult one because you're only one set of hands. And I was thinking, It is the question of the personal touch, but also the quality. You've been doing this for 10 years. Do you know what I mean?
It's my baby. Can I trust somebody else to make things in the way that I do? And it's kind of it's like, how big do I want to get, and how big can I get? And But
I get you totally.
Recently, I've actually made a couple of bags for. There's a sword manufacturer based down in Shoreham, Pooley Swords.
Okay.
And the gentleman that runs the company had seen one of my bags at an event and loved it. And he's actually got a very small museum kind of section within his business down in Shoreham. And he asked for a couple of bags to go in his museum. And he wants to put these bags in his museum, which is just like, that's brilliant. Amazing. Yeah. So I've done an RAF bag and a Navy bag so far, and we're just currently in discussions about what we're going to do for the Army bag because, as we say, there's so many different regiments and corps and that. And, you're going to upset somebody at some point, but...
Heidi, it has been, like, it's been fascinating talking to you about your business, talking to you about the craft and how it came about, and your career, I guess you've always been in that creative space because photography is creative, right?
Yeah.
Now you're
in the military. Is still, there's still a creative element to it. So yeah,
hugely creative, more creative, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it is fascinating, and following your company, following your business, seeing the quality of the stuff. Hey, at least you never need to get a photographer in to photograph your stuff.
Exactly.
Do you
There
know what I
is
mean?
that.
Every win.
Yes, exactly. It's great because I've got no problem with taking the photos, and if anything, I kind of not dumb it down, but I try not to overly do the photos. I don't get the whole studio set up and put the lights on because I think that's too much.
Yeah.
So I just stick it to nice and simple, bit of daylight, and it works. But yeah, it's quite nice to not have that part of my business to worry about.
Heidi, thank you so much for giving your time up, for taking your time away from the machine to come on the podcast. Yeah, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been good chatting to you.
Take care, Heidi.